Pack Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media for writers by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack.
Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, author of Crazy Things, working on something new. Also, I'm president of St. Louis Writers Guild. And coming in June of 2017 is Gateway Con. I'm sure by the time I turn around to Brad, he'll give you more detail on that. And also listening to the end of this broadcast. Also with me today is my lovely wife.
I'm Melanie Lucas. What?
I had to do that. I'm used to saying my lovely co-host, but she's not here today.
She's your co-everything.
Yeah, she's my co-everything now.
Yeah, I'm Melanie Lucas. I'm here with our lovely cat, Twain. He's currently sleeping, so maybe he'll behave. I haven't actually written much of anything this week, but in theory I write science fiction and fantasy. No, I have written some nonfiction this week, but it's very boring, not technical nonfiction.
It is practice.
It's science.
Yes.
Science and legalese.
It's science, legalese, and confidential, so it's definitely not going to be published. Okay.
So tell us all about it.
It's called medical research regulation.
HIPAA.
Yes. And also with us now is
Fedora Amos. I write Victorian Whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis and Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And I am Vice President of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime. Woohoo!
I'm George Soroy. I'm the Vice President of the Missouri Writers Guild, Conference Chair of the 2017 Missouri Writers Guild Conference, which will be taking place in Columbia, Missouri, May 5th through the 7th. Will be a lot of fun. Hope to see you guys there. I am also an author of science fiction for the young adult reader, including Excelsior, the 5-part serial From Parts Unknown, and soon to be finished Ever Upward, Part 2 of the Excelsior Journey. I'm also a up-and-coming voice actor with a lot of new developments in the pipeline. There will be more stories to come.
We'll be talking after this. Next.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. I'm still working. Thank you. I'm still working on my first fantasy novel for young adults and adults. And it's called Threadcaster, and I want to announce out loud to the whole room, I have an official launch date.
You do?
Mark your calendars.
Nice.
The launch date is March the 25th.
March the 25th.
So,
I love it.
there'll be a party at Main Street Books in St. Charles,
Nice.
2 to 5. That Saturday on the 25th, and please come out. I'll be teaching people to do string curves.
Ooh.
Nice.
Nice. 3/25/17. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. I am Brad R. Cook, author of The Iron Chronicles, which is now completely out, so check it out. Iron Lotus has hit the shelves. So thank you to anyone who came out to Main Street Books.
Our favorite place.
Yay.
That's because they're awesome. I am also the author of many other things, and I'm going to wait a couple of episodes to tell you all about that, but 2017 should be a big year, so let's check it.
Well, actually, you know what? You might want to hold off a little bit on announcing it, because we do have by popular request of fans,
That's
we are
what I
doing
was waiting for.
Yep, we're doing the resolution
Yes.
episode coming up soon.
So I will tell you all about that on the resolutions and what's coming up for 2017 show.
I should have saved my announcement.
No,
That's a great save the date right there. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the only thing people are concerned with today.
Exactly.
That's because we love you.
Hey.
Yes, and then I guess yes, you can totally register for Gateway Con at stlwritersguild.org
/ GatewayCon.
gatewaycon.html. You will find the registration pages for the Writers Conference, which please do register for. It's going to be a blast. And then also to get a table in the Author Hall. If you're an author, you want to sell books at the book fair that we're going to be throwing all weekend long, you can sign up for a table there as well. It's going to be awesome, so check it out. And then, so that's the updates I'll give you this week.
Yep. Also, too,
Tune in next
if
week.
you work for somebody who would be interested in sponsoring a writers' conference, there's another link for you.
You can sign up there as well.
Yeah. So, a moment ago, before we get started, I mentioned that we have the resolutions episode that has turned, I guess, into an annual event that I was unaware it was an annual event.
I know it's an annual event. I just thought we were doing it in January or something like that.
Anyway.
But I'm happy to do it earlier.
Yeah. But anyway, short version.
We are doing it in January.
We probably are. Yeah.
I think it will be airing in January.
We're doing it in January, Brad.
Exactly. I knew that.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, we live in this space between spaces.
Exactly.
Anyway, reason why I'm bringing that part up before we get started is we are currently also working on season 4, what to talk about for all of next year. Yes, I can easily find lots of topics, but guess what?
Well, we could just talk about Star Wars every week.
Like we always do.
Yes.
Yawn.
You know, by this time, I bet the new movie has come out and we've all seen it.
Indeed.
Yeah. And this is why I can't ever get 4 words in edgewise. But anyway, please contact us on our Facebook page, or if you want to, tweet to us about any ideas that you have for next year. But you want to hear from us. In fact, we had a fan. First name is Tom. Tom, hi out there.
Hi, Tom.
We've took your ideas and I have them down. I don't know. I can't tell you when they're going to be scheduled, but I have them down for next year, so they will be airing. So, and to the rest of you, hey, we are talking on your behalf.
I like the hi.
Be like Tom. Send in your ideas.
Yeah, seriously. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about finding literary magazines and finding the one that's right for you. Now, when I talk about literary magazines, I'm talking about the actual lit mags that are still out there. They are, I'm sorry, at least the big ones are fewer than they used to be. We're also talking about ezines, which are the electronic version of magazines. And we're going to talk about other types of literary magazines for authors to discuss as well. Before I get started, unless you want to jump in real fast, I'm going to talk about the past and the present. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, then I'll turn that over to you. If we could jump into the Blue Tartarus and go back in time to, say, 1980s, 90s, this would have still been the case. Literary magazines were your major gatekeeper to getting published in the traditional sense.
Further back than that, I mean, that's what the New Yorker's for.
Right, that's what, yeah. I'm saying that this was still the case. Somewhere in the 2000s, with the internet becoming fully spread out across the world, it kind of stopped being as strong of a gatekeeper. It still can be. In fact, I had asked a international bestseller and a legend in his field this question a couple years ago, if he thought literary magazines were still the gatekeeper. And I'm not going to throw his name under the bus, but I am going to say that he is a legend in the mystery and thriller field. And he said, with the way things have changed, they are not as much at all. In fact, you don't have to go through them anymore. So let me start off by turning this over to Brad, because he wants to talk about literary magazines. But I want to talk about what are the roles of literary magazines. Go ahead.
To start off with, I'm going to shamelessly plug the St. Louis Writers Guild, who has the best literary magazines. See, it even says it right there.
It says The Scribe.
He points to the cover of
our
2015 omnibus.
Yes. So The Scribe
which you can find on Amazon for $10.
Exactly. The Scribe is a literary magazine by St. Louis Writers Guild. Comes out, obviously on a monthly basis, and has articles about writing. It has poetry, short stories, write-ups of our events, and all that kind of fun stuff. And I do all the glorious covers for it, so that's awesome too. But anyway, the reason I point out The Scribe is because as a literary magazine, it is a place that publishes writers. That is what all literary magazines are there for. And as David was kind of alluding to, it did used to be the case where some of the greatest writers you've ever known got published in the New Yorker. After a story or two in the New Yorker, then they would get the book deal and go from there or whatever. But it's a place for your short stories, for your poetry, for your essays, for whatever you write. And there are a bunch out there, but the Scribe is awesome, and it's free, except the omnibus is not. The whole collection that's in there is $10, but the actual issues that come out every month are totally free, and you can find them on our website and in our newsletter and all that fun stuff.
I would add that virtually every college, certainly all of the big ones, have literary magazines, like the Missouri Review, which is one that we have here within our state. And they tend, of course, to be rather highbrow, but they do have an assortment of things that they will include. You do have to be very careful about getting things in on time and in the right kind of format that they have suggested, but they will often have not only fiction items, but also poetry and nonfiction articles, and are often kind of an omnibus sort of place where you might get a good start if you tend to write things that are a bit highbrow and significant, morally significant.
Exactly. Important works.
Important works. Written.
Yes. Could I point out something that's true of both the Scribe and of a lot of college magazines? Namely, you have to be affiliated with the organization to publish in most of them.
Right.
Yes. You have to be a member of the Scribe to write. Or you
No,
have to be a
you
member of
St.
St.
Louis
Writers
Guild
Guild to write for the Scribe.
And
to get to read
usually,
the Scribe.
and usually with the colleges, you need to be either a student, faculty member, etc.
Usually alumni can publish there too, right?
Right. Well, it depends, and that's once again you need to check out the requirements that they post for it. So
because here in St. Louis, we also have a literary journal, I think it is, that comes out once a year, I think. River Styx, or is it more than once a year? I think it's just once a year.
It looks like it's dated by year on the side.
It is.
I have to ask this, Brad. Are they still?
I don't know if they're still doing it. If they're going to go to an e-version.
I know there was talk. That's why I'm asking.
Part of the problem is the long time editor has departed, and now they're looking for somebody new and figuring out exactly what to do. But River Styx is a great one. And one of the benefits and one of the great things about River Styx is you did not have to be affiliated with anything. You just submitted, they chose the best works, they would vote on them, work on them, all that kind of stuff. It does have a ton of poetry, some fiction, some essays, contest winners and microfiction, some arts, some illustrations. So that gives you an idea of the kinds of things that go into your average literary journal, but they're great, and you can find them, and there are a ton of them out there. So
I would say too that they mostly don't pay you anything except a few copies.
This is true. You're mostly going to get paid in copies. Copies of the book.
The ones that pay you are far and few between nowadays. A couple that I do know that do pay you, of course. Now I'm really hitting the high level on the commercial side of the business versus the highbrow or academic. And that is Ellery Queen, Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine, Asimov. Thank you. I am sorry to the great God Isaac on that one.
These aren't literary though. These are
genre. They're genre, but they are lit mags. Lit mag. Okay, I think I need to take this back. Literary magazines that we're talking about are the magazines where you can get your short stories published. And how to find out which ones are connected to it. So yes, lit mags like Ellery Queen and so forth. We're not just at the academic.
So are they called literary magazines because they're trying to differentiate themselves from journalistic magazines or popular magazines?
Yeah, you got literary.
It's not like literary like the genre literary.
Right. It's not like
literary
the genre.
like a magazine category.
Right. Versus we were talking off mic. Fedora was talking about romance writers. We were trying to think if there's any magazines that publish romance stories, and we couldn't think of any off the top of our heads. But what was it, Women's World?
Sometimes there is fiction in some of the better, of the really slick women's magazine, like Women's World, for example, and they do pay very well, but they're mighty darn hard to get into.
Right. Yes. But they also publish articles. And that's
Yes.
what you're talking about, Jen, versus when we're saying literary, we're talking about fiction and poetry.
Well,
and
we
so
shouldn't
forth.
limit it either. Like in the sense that
Oh,
you
we
can
can go.
become a published. You know, you can
Yeah.
write for magazines. This
Well,
is a
certainly, it's
whole,
good pay.
Yeah, this is a
You
whole
can get
segment of our
Yes,
industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can write for People, or write for Maxim, or write for Time, or write for National Geographic. You can do that. That is a whole thing. You're going to have to niche it. It's a tough career to get into, but that is a definite viable way of earning a living.
And to borrow from the St. Louis Press Club the other night, do you know the difference between a reporter or a columnist in this case and a pizza?
Large pizza.
A large pizza.
No.
A large pizza can still feed a family of 4.
Oh. Owie.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So.
painful reality of journalism in our country. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So go ahead and I'll get.
Okay. So the other thing I was going to throw out, since we've now thrown it open beyond literary magazines, so these are 3 magazines that you can get published in if you're a children's author.
Oh, let me stop you for a second.
And
For those,
An illustrator.
before he was talking about River Styx, and I'm assuming most of our audience can guess that's spelled like the Greek mythology,
Yes.
not Sticks. But
No,
for those who
STY.
didn't guess it, yes.
Yes. So these are cricket, cicada, and spider, which are the 3 most popular, probably, like children's magazines.
they're all under the same. They're all owned by the same company.
Yes, they are all owned by the same company.
What's the? Is it Highlights? The popular children's.
Highlights is
magazines?
another one.
It's another file. People know highlights from every office waiting room.
Yeah.
ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
But all of them, and I'm holding this up to the microphone so you all can see at home.
That helps. That's rad.
They
Thank
do
you.
publish short stories, puzzles, games, all that kind of stuff. It can be a wonderful thing to get into. You can totally submit. They don't require agents or anything like that. They do have a whole process for submission. But the one thing that I would mention is it is incredibly slow going, and there's no guarantee that you're actually going to make it.
Yeah, it's very
So-
difficult. They only have so many pages per issue.
Exactly. And, most of the issues are planned out at the beginning of the year. So you might not be in this year's, you might be in next year's, you might be in 2 years from now's issue. So it's not really the most reliable type of income. It's more to get yourself published, to get out there. However,
Get your name
once you start writing for them, they'll come back to you. So there's, it can be a wonderful way of getting published.
One thing to really quickly chime in, since Brad mentioned the submission process, for every single place that you are submitting to, read and become very familiar with every little bit of the submission guidelines. The tiniest little deviation from them will be the perfect excuse for them to toss yours out and completely reject it. So
Exactly.
make sure you read every single line of those submission guidelines and follow them to the letter if you want to get anywhere with this.
Yep.
And before I turn this over, I was just going to do a foreshadow. It's the idea of a foreshadow. Is we're going to talk about some submission guideline. One submission guideline I've always run across with literary magazines is just look at our previous works.
Yeah.
To see if they work.
You should
for
always get
Yeah.
issues for previous
Right.
issues.
And I'm going to talk about some places that you can do that without having to spend a hell of a lot of money. So go ahead.
Are we talking just about those that take fiction? Or are we talking about magazine world in general?
Go for
Well,
it.
originally we were going to talk about fiction, but let's go ahead and talk, since it's wide open, let's go wide
Because I'm
open.
breaking with my next stack of magazines. I'm breaking the mold.
Brad came prepared with extra reading.
I did. I got reading.
Because by a vast majority, the magazines out there are going to be non-fiction oriented and not fiction oriented. And there are thousands, literally, for any kind of tiny niche that you might be interested in.
Oh, indeed.
From golfing, which is not that tiny a niche even, but motorcycles, anything that you really have
Travel.
an interest in, then that is where you should go, especially remembering this little statistic. Of all of the stuff published in any given year that is sent to people, 15% of it is going to be, if I'm saying this wrong, only 6% of fiction gets published, but 15% of nonfiction does. So you're better off to do that, especially if you can write an article on something unusual that's fits your niche, and you can get great pictures. Boy, do they love great pictures.
Yes. And before it turns over to Jen, you are next. I'm going to say what you just kind of said it for me. The statistics wise was 6% fiction is published, 15% nonfiction.
Yep.
In fact, if you look at the magazines for fiction, the big publishers, I'm not talking about the ones that will start because somebody wants to open up a magazine. I'm talking about the big pubs have shrunk, just like the book publishers have shrunk considerably over the last 20 plus years. So, and I mean very significantly. So it's something to be aware of and to know about. And I'm not trying to kill everything. I do want to talk about ezines eventually, and then I do want to talk about how to find these and find your niche. So go ahead.
Well, I guess sort of an ezine. I thought this would be a great time to bring up C. Hope Clark's Funds for Writers, which is a website and an email newsletter.
Yeah.
But
not easy, but yeah.
C. Hope Clark came to the Missouri Writers Guild conference a couple years ago, and I was her speaker shepherd, and we had a good time. But she gave a great lecture about how to sort of get started in writing as a career. And the way she chose to do it to start with was to write articles. She had an interest in, she was living in New Mexico, I believe, or Arizona. Sorry, Hope, if I got that wrong. I took notes the day of. I have a different notebook on me today. But she started off and she had some downtime, was gardening, was doing some landscaping, had a landscaping guy come out and learned some interesting stuff and said, I'm going to research that, I'm going to write a report on it. And she wrote an article about it, and then she found a magazine that was niche-y, like Fedora said, specifically for that thing that she was writing about. Either it was lawn care or landscaping or a specific plant, I do not remember, but it was something that she encountered in her daily life and said, I'm going to write about this thing. And she wrote about it, and she got a picture, and she sent it away, and they gave her money. She said, great. So Funds for Writers is actually a list of opportunities for writers and places that you can send your stuff to. That is like the magazine that she found that published the one thing that she wrote. So she wasn't saying, I subscribe to Tractors Weekly. I should write an article about tractors. It was, what? I have an interest in tractors today. There's a tractor store down the street. I'm going to go interview a guy about tractors and see if there's something cool to write about tractors. And she wrote the thing. She didn't have she had never been published in a tractor magazine before, but she sent the thing off, and that was a good way to get published in a magazine, a nonfiction magazine, but still, same thing. Yep. So check her out, sign up for her newsletter.
Very much so.
Yeah, and we need to write an article about cats. That's what Mark is saying right now.
Yes.
Yes, Mark is jumping up and down.
He's clunking around.
Okay.
He's giving me attention.
However, I would warn you, some niches are a little bit more heavier than others, i.e. writing about cats.
Yeah.
You gotta come up with a really interesting cat thing in order to get published in a...
Cat Fancy is a crowded magazine.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I subscribed to that for a while when I was a teenager.
Brad, do you want to cover some last books, and then I want to jump into...
Okay, I was going to switch it up a bit, though. So
please do. Go ahead.
The other type of magazine that I'd like to talk about today are magazines for writers. Often, yes, you can write for these if you want, but they can be exceptionally beneficial to read. One of them is actually my favorite, and it is SCBWI's their booklet they send out quarterly or something like that. It's like a couple times a year.
What does SCBWI stand
Yes, SCBWI is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators.
Thank you.
There's a song. We could sing it too.
I will film it if they do it.
This is a professional, organization, writing organization for children's writers and illustrators.
Yes.
But they also produce. What is the name of their little journal they do every year?
Oh heavens, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I can ask
remember.
Dr. Google.
But it's a wonderful thing. Is it Bulletin?
Paging Dr. Google.
I think it's Bulletin.
WI.
I think it's Bulletin is what they put out every year. But anyway, the Bulletin's the normal one, and then there's a different one. But the point is that for a children's writer like myself, there's always different things in there about what agents are looking for in
it's the
children's stuff.
SCBWI Bulletin.
Okay.
The quarterly magazine.
Yes. They have a yearly one too, though, I thought, or something.
Do you want me to go deeper into
No.
the internet and find
Quite
out?
But anyway, so it can be a wonderful thing. Others do this as well. The Scribe kind of falls into this as well because they do a lot of stuff for writers, not just about, what's going on. And the other one that I've always kind of enjoyed is Poets and Writers, which I'm
a good one.
assuming it's still around.
Yeah.
But you'll find this in your Barnes and Nobles and all that kind of stuff. The one I have is like from decades ago. The one I've got right here.
Yeah.
But it has a ton of stuff. This one happens to have something on Jonathan Franzen, the art of the personal narrative, and a whole thing on small press pride. So, I keep them. I've always, I'm like that, so I retain my stuff. But part of the reason I do, too, is if I ever need to go back and reread that article and that cool thing that I read in there, it can be a really good thing. So there's a ton of magazines for writers. We've talked about books for writers and stuff like that before. But there are a ton of great magazines and journals for writers.
Well, let me throw here, and then I'm going to go to Fedora. Since we're talking about magazines for writers, I'm just going to talk about, obviously, Writer's Digest, you've heard us talk about before. The Writer magazine is also a great one. There are, at least to my knowledge, several magazines for every type of genre out there, if you're interested in it. The Mystery Scene, I know, is one for mysteries. I'm trying to think for science fiction, and my mind just went blank. That's why I'm going to turn it over to
Magazine of Science Fiction and Fantasy.
Yes, and that does have.
Asimov.
Yep.
Strange something or other. Strange Happenings.
Not sure. Go ahead. I turn it over to you.
In the same vein, most professional writers' organizations have some kind of magazine that they put out. Historical Novel Society puts out Historical Novels Review.
Yep.
The Romance Writers of America has something about romance. And then there's Romantic Times, which isn't by them, but which is a magazine for romance, which I had not thought of one before, but that is one. And it is true also of most other big nationwide writers' organizations. They have some kind of magazine that they put out perhaps quarterly, perhaps monthly. It varies.
Yes.
I will say there is the other... I'm president of St. Louis Writers Guild, but I also belong to another writing organization, which reminds me that dues is due, so I need to send that sometime next month. The Pacific Northwest Writers Association, they have an online magazine that they keep going with, which has some great writing advice. They also have a podcast, and I think its name is Author to Author, but I'd have to double check that.
In case you're curious, the monthly trade magazine for Romance Writers of America is the Romance Writers Report.
Okay.
And you can write for these. They are looking for advice on romance or whatever the genre is primarily, or book reviews, that kind of thing, that are professionally oriented.
Book reviews are a good way to get published in certain levels of magazines.
Yeah, there's a lot of places that let you review for them. There are websites and magazines you can sign up for that will actually send you arcs of things. Meredith Tate, who's appeared on the show in previous seasons, she has gotten everything from picture books to full novels to movies and tickets to first run movies, not just DVDs, through review sites for free because she does work for them for free and is paid in media. So there are places you can sign up if you want to get your review chops going.
Yes.
I can actually second that because I've worked with a pop culture website for my real strong period of time. There was about 6 years writing for 411mania.com, and through there, I have gotten my share of DVDs to review, movies to review, things of that nature, and it was a great resource, and I was even able to get paid through there for a period of time.
Nice, sign up for his site instead.
Yeah. One thing, I'm going to pause this for a second. If you can't tell, if you're new to writing, or you're not so much new to writing, but you're new to trying to actually get paid for this art that you're trying to do and make it a career, there is no one road. There is no trail that you can follow behind.
You mean there's not a magic bullet for
There's not a magic bullet. There's not a magic formula.
Dang.
Everybody finds their own path, and it is so many different so many different ways to climb this mountain that we all are climbing.
There's
That
not even a map.
no, there really
Or a
isn't.
trail.
Or a trail.
And especially
No
with
markings.
the advent of the internet, I would say before the advent, there was kind of, sort of a trail, kind of. Where we talked about earlier, you went through lit mags to get published, blah blah blah.
Yeah, you got to.
And nowadays you're
by
not-
the newspaper.
Yeah, nowadays that's not there anymore. So that small trail has been kind of brushed aside by the wind. So let's go down another road, which is ezines. Ezines, we've talked about. Some organizations do have them. Some people create ezines, and they try to run them as magazines. They are cheaper to run, but they're also hard to make money, which sometimes causes the ezines to be here today and gone tomorrow. And it's one of the things you have to be careful of. In fact, I have some
think
more
you should also
published.
mention the big guys, which would be BuzzFeed and Huffington Post.
Yeah, I'll
and
let
you
you
can't
talk
write
about
for
that in a
those.
second. Yeah,
You can write for those. Not always for pay, but
yeah.
Mm.
So, with ezines, with magazines, you want to write. I mean, you want to get something published. You want to preferably get paid because we spend lots of hours over that computer of ours typing away and trying to earn our carpal tunnel merit badge. So, what's the best ways to look these up? What's the best way to find what's going to match for you? And I did say earlier that often I've always seen in their submission guidelines, check out previous episodes. Previous issues of ours. And that's one way, of course, they get you to buy the magazine. But
You can go to the library and get most of them.
she stole me. She stole my thunder. Yeah, actually, honestly, yes. You can go to your local libraries. If they don't have it, check out your local universities and colleges. They may have them as well in their library.
Oh, they're also in libraries. Are anthologies of the best stories from,
Yep.
say, Ellery Queen, or the best stories from Alfred Hitchcock. So you can get a good smidgen of a whole lot of things and not just settle for one issue, because those are going to be the cream of the cream.
Yep. And I'm going to say, too, don't be afraid to expand your horizons with where you're writing. Because, and where I'm going to go with that is, we've talked about some of the basic magazines of the literary field or of the fiction field, like Ellery Queen, and science fictions, Isaac Asimov's, and so on. But I'm going to remind everybody, Arthur C. Clarke did get published with a science fiction story in Playboy. So
You read it for the articles, you know.
I always did when I was a kid, when I was younger.
That's less of a thing now, but
yeah.
it used to be a really big thing to get your stuff in Playboy.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, you always don't be afraid to expand.
And Stephen King also, started out by getting a couple of short stories here and there, by getting them in more of the adult-oriented books that were not, were not Playboy, but were, the lower tier ones. But at least he got himself,
Right.
Well, and
Yeah,
what
you
this
needed,
is,
you needed a tear sheet at that point. You needed proof that you'd been published in something
Exactly.
to get
Yeah.
people to take you seriously.
Yeah.
well, and it also is about building your brand and building your identity and building a fan base.
Unless you're
I
Neil
mean,
Gaiman.
You needed people to read it. They didn't have the internet back then, so
Right.
by people
Or
reading your
saps.
work, this was how you got known. So that when you released your book, people knew who you were.
Yeah.
This was the function of a lot of magazines and literary journals. I've been doing all the research for the history of St. Louis Writers Guild, and one of the things that I find biggest is how many of the professional writers of the day would publish a few novels, but there is a huge list of magazines that would publish them. Some of them, like the Saturday Evening Post and a bunch of the others, would publish people on a fairly regular basis.
And let me add too that back in the early days, newspapers published
newspapers
fiction
were
stories.
huge. I find
Wait a
a
minute,
lot
they
of
still do.
newspapers
No.
where they're publishing short stories
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff on a regular basis. Sam Hellman, the founder of St. Louis Writers Guild, that was the biggest way he got published, was through the newspaper until he made films.
Yeah, until he
Until
got
he became
published through
screenwriter.
Hollywood.
Yeah, then Hollywood took him, and
That was the last time we saw him. He didn't. No, never
He
mind.
never came back.
it's true. Making Shirley Temple movies and stuff like that.
Like, you're not lying.
Really, I'm not. Go ahead. Go on.
If you have a religious bent, there is a lot of opportunity really there. First, inspirational lines like Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
They're always looking for inspirational stories along those lines. And virtually every big denomination has not just one, but many magazines and local publications. Once again, you may not be able to get much in terms of money, though Chicken Soup for the Soul pays.
Yep.
Not much, but some.
But some,
But
yeah.
when you're publishing every one, I
Right.
mean, you know, Linda
Yeah,
O'Connell
you know,
makes
yeah.
a living.
They've fragmented out into like smaller and smaller categories. You can find a chicken soup that's coming out like, Chicken from Soup for the Soul speaks to, car parts or something.
The chicken soup for soul for mechanics. Yes.
Chicken soup for the mechanic soul. There you go.
Yes. But yeah, there is a lot out there. So how do we discover this? How do we find them? Writer's Digest is a good location. Poet and Writers.
We have the biggest advantage. We have the internet.
Yeah.
We do have the internet,
Google.
but one problem with the internet by itself only is you can fall into the pit of those who are looking for, how should I say this? Once again, the predators out there.
Mm-hmm.
So
you should always do your research.
always do your research, and that's what I'm talking about. The writers' market is also a good place to look.
I would start with your own associations, the things
Yes.
that you belong to. If, for example, you're a teacher who belongs to the National Education Association, they have a couple of magazines. You have to write an article which is positive about education. If you can do that, you can submit it. So I suggest you start with what you love and find an organization that you belong to or can belong to and work through them.
We didn't even mention AARP. That's a huge magazine.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and I think you just have to be over 50. So
I think
there's
it's
a-
55.
It used to be 50.
Well, it
No,
might
it's
still be
50.
50. Don't take me at my word for it.
They
I put
want
my
a lot of
phone away at
members.
this point, so
Yeah.
the internet is not telling me how.
Well, that'd be surprising if the age went up to 55 as retirement ages go up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, but they want a lot of members, so I don't see them excluding too many people.
Yeah.
Where else can you go to find out information? You got the internet, you've got your organizations you might belong to, writing organizations too, by the way. And I mentioned Writers Market, Writers Digest, Poets and Writers, and Writers Mag.
Well, I mentioned Funds for Writers. So you check them out. That's a website. I've mentioned before on previous episodes Writers Digest's annual actual paper book editions that they send out. I every year go and buy the children's literature and illustrator workbook. That's not the actual name of it, but Google it. It's fine. It's the Writers Digest one. But inside, I buy that for my illustration company because inside they have a list of all the official publishing magazines and publishing houses that are operating in the U.S. and Canada and some in England as well. And with addresses and websites and what they're looking for and what they publish and where you can go to find more about them. And I use that resource to try and further my illustration company. So I recommend those books. They have one for poetry, they have one for nonfiction, I believe. They have one for adult fiction, for fantasy, for just fiction writers, and then I have the children's one. Alright, go on every year. I need to buy the new one.
Chuck, thanks you.
Mm-hmm. Love you, Chuck.
I was going to throw out my favorite place to go search for magazines. The first is Barnes & Noble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I get Chuck's book.
Exactly. So I wandered through the magazine racks there, and it's a wonderful way to find magazines you didn't know existed. And then the other one that I always have enjoyed is the library, because they tend to have tons of magazines as well, though they tend to have older magazines, not necessarily the latest. Depends upon your library, how cool they are.
How well funded they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
I
many
will
subscriptions
guarantee you.
do they buy?
I will guarantee you they're better funded than you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, this is why I like Barnes & Noble, because Barnes & Noble has a huge selection. I also like other bookstores, their magazine sections and stuff like that. There's a great one that used to have a huge magazine section. It's kind of dwindled now. It was World News in Clayton.
Is it still around?
It
Okay, to answer that question.
It's a convenience. It's
Well,
still there.
It's there, but it's there to go get like snacks and sodas.
Yeah,
I understand.
It's not what it used to be back in the day. Like nothing.
But it
like
is
that.
still very cute.
I used to go to a satellite up in Westport Plaza, which is long since
gone. But yeah, so it's newsstands used to be really cool. They were this thing where news happened, where you would go get your newspaper and magazines and everything else like that. They're kind of a dying art now.
And they may still exist in some towns or some cities, but definitely not around here.
I've seen a few, but like in New York, you'll still find a couple that are, but they're very far between. But anyway, so those can be great places. Anywhere that's going to sell a ton of magazines is a good place to be able to go. I used to love Borders. They had a huge one. Took up the entire little annex that was right there where the coffee shop was. So they can be wonderful places to just find random magazines you didn't know existed. But I always like Google for that too.
I wonder if there's a place on Amazon where you can put in a search term and get that listing. I've never tried it.
Amazon has some magazines, but not Smashwords. What was the service we used to use? Scribd.
Scribd, yeah.
Yeah,
Scribner.
Not Scribd.
No, Scrivener is a writing program.
Yes.
Yes, I know. I said it and I was like, no, that's stupid.
Scribd, which is it's one of the online publishing sites, but it was mostly for magazines and journals. And you can find ones that are free and ones that cost just a couple of bucks and everything like that. Download the PDFs of them. It's a great place to go. It's a great place if you want to publish something that isn't necessarily quite like your standard ebook. But yeah, Scribd was great for that. I don't know if Scribd really still has the market that it used to have on magazines, but that's what it was for. I mean, that's where it made its niche, was in magazines and journals.
So how do you, obviously we always have talked about editors, predators, or predators, editors, and all the other places. How do you avoid the scams that are out there with lit mags? How do you also find out if a literary magazine is legitimate in the sense that they've got longevity to it, not legitimate, longevity to it.
To be honest,
longevity. Thank you.
You're not going to know. There is no place you can go.
Yeah.
Predators and Editors doesn't really focus on magazines that much. Writers Beware and any of the other sites, they're way more focused on publishers and that side of the industry than they are on magazines. But there are things you should look for every time you are submitting to a magazine. First off,
any zine.
One, what kind of rights are they taking from your work? Is it one-time publications in this work? Are they retaining anything beyond that? If they're retaining anything other than the one-time publication rights to publish in their magazine, and it's not Time or National Geographic or something that's going to pay you a ton of money, that's generally a bad sign. If they want a lot of your rights, that's never a good sign. They should basically want your the first run publication rights on it. The weird ones fall in with you can never publish this anywhere else. And that means throughout the entire life. So you've written this piece, it's for that magazine, it will be in that one issue of that magazine, and it will never appear anywhere else in the history of mankind.
Right. Good luck.
Some places do that. Some places require that. Others are more open, and they just want the first run rights, but you can 5 years from now publish it in another magazine. That's fine. But those are the kinds of things you want to look for. And then, are they paying you, and what are they paying you? Are they paying you actual money? How long until they pay you? Is it going to be at the end of the year when they're doling out? Is it going to be right up front? Are they just paying you in copies? Are they paying you in one copy? So you get one copy of what you wrote, or are they giving you 5 copies of what they wrote? Because that can mean a lot. And then, there are probably a few other things that you should pay attention to, but it's all going to be things that you see in their submissions and their requirements and all that kind of stuff. Maybe in the contract if you have to sign it, but Usually magazine contracts are like 1 page or so.
Yeah.
It's basically just a piece of paper to say they can publish it.
We are going to accept it, and here's your money.
Yeah.
Money?
Yes,
Hopefully.
money.
There's $10.
10? Wow.
Ellery Queen.
National Geographic pays very well.
Yeah, Ellery Queen and those pay by the word. They pay pennies, but they pay on the word.
Well, that adds up, though. When
Yes,
you
it
get
does.
7 or 8 cents a word, it's not that bad, folks.
No.
But a lot of them also will pay by the article, like $500 an article, or $200 or whatever it is that they're paying. And I think that that is a good way to determine whether it's worthwhile sending them anything, unless you're just trying to get your name out there, because you do want to get paid for it. I mean, why shouldn't you?
Yeah.
It is hard work, and you have done it. And if they like it, they should pay you for the privilege of publishing it. So if you're going to get 7 or 8 cents a word, or $200 or $500, go for it.
Exactly.
Well, this begs the question: what should a first-time writer sending articles out sort of expect in return from magazines? And
Most
on
of them will
average?
just say what they pay. Period.
Just right up front.
Yeah, they will if they're honest.
We'll say for scientific journals, peer-reviewed journals, not the way it works.
Right, that's
Peer-reviewed
different.
journals, you don't get paid at all. Maybe you get free magazines, but even anymore, I'm not sure you do. This is even for like Nature, all that, and it's getting more and more common that you pay them. Yeah, and those are for the legitimate ones.
Yeah.
What makes it legitimate is you still have to go through the peer review process, and they're very upfront with the fees.
Yeah.
Well, they have a captive audience because professors who are interested in this kind of thing pretty much have to write if they're going to maintain their status at school.
Yep. Or in the research field at all. Yep.
Yep.
So with that, is there any final words that you have on literary magazines?
Well, I would throw out also that beyond the magazine side of this, there is also, and we've touched on it, writing for websites, different things like this. The reason I bring it up is there are sites, and there's more than one, that will show you what magazines, and some of them are very dubious, so be careful when you go after this, but it's the kind of thing where, like, if you can write a 500 word piece on clipping coupons, they will pay you $20 for that, and you can write 10 different articles on clipping coupons, and they'll pay you to whatever for each article. It's a thing you can do. I mean, people do make money writing this way. Freelancers, it's a big way freelance writers make pittance to make up for some of the bigger articles they write.
They save up for that they
but you have to,
pizza.
it's very subject specific.
Yeah.
And you'll see, like, this weird coupon clipping place is looking for a feature they can run, to try and draw people in. And a lot of times you'll also get paid by the click.
Yeah.
So for
If
every...
it's an online magazine, it's all about what kind of traffic you drive.
Exactly.
Right.
The more traffic you drive, the more money you make.
Go ahead.
I'd be very careful because a lot of times a magazine that does print is not going to want anything that's already online, and they will not look at it, and in fact they probably won't look at it unless it's an individual submission, an exclusive submission, because they're just not interested in anybody else's retreads.
This kind of the bottom rung of writing, when you're writing about clipping coupons or something like that.
And
so be careful, because most magazines are going to want it.
The first run.
Exactly. Exclusive submission.
And I guess my final words are just even we're talking about getting paid in money, and us fiction writers who are going into magazines may not get a lot of money out of it, but you might be paid in something to put in your bio paragraph on your query letter.
Exactly.
So keep that in mind too.
Start somewhere.
If you find out that the magazine you're submitting to doesn't pay a lot, and you say, well, why is it worth my time? Take a moment and think: is the magazine a nice enough magazine to say, I don't get paid? I'm not going to really get paid for this article, or this short story or this poem, but I'll be able to write about it later, and people will think that that's important and it will help me out.
Sometimes $1 is actually important. So if they pay you $1, then you can say you're a paid author.
Yeah,
you can get a Missouri Writers Guild that way. Hey, it's true. I've known people who got in for that. So, but to tag on to what she just said, as a steampunk author, if there was a steampunk magazine that was like a big magazine, I would probably even forego pay just to be able to get my name out to that level of readership.
Because you're appealing to an audience that may not know who you are otherwise,
Exactly.
but they do know you write, and they know they have sample pages in front of them that you've written, and maybe they'll buy your book.
And also to kind of tag on to what Fedora said, like when she was talking about an exclusive piece of work and everything, it's very rare, if any place that would accept an excerpt from a larger work.
Yeah.
So make sure that whatever item you are submitting, if it's a short story, make sure it has a beginning, middle, and end. So that way, that way the reader has that, and not find out what happens by getting this book, because then they'll just throw it across the room. So.
And you will be remembered.
Well, and usually they'll be stringent on their word counts too.
Yes.
Because they're trying to fit it into column space.
Yes.
They don't have infinite space to publish whatever you want.
I've read a lot of novels where it's like this little piece would make a good short story, even though it was a piece of a much bigger story.
Well, you'll find reviews too, where they'll give you an excerpt of the book or something in the magazine or something. But that's different.
One thing that you can look at is the circulation, which you will be able to find generally for any given magazine. If they have a big circulation, just that alone might be enough that you want your name in it.
Yep.
So with that, thank you for listening.
Strive for the New Yorker.
Right from New Yorker, huh? Okay. With that, have a great week writing. Tune in next week for yet another interesting story in the writing industry.
GatewayCon? What is GatewayCon? The Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention, brought to you by St. Louis Writers Guild, is a new, unique experience for writers looking for their work to be either traditionally published, independently published, self-published, or to further their writing career. Coming in June 2017, GatewayCon will provide opportunities for writers to pitch their work to agents, hone their craft regardless if it is genre fiction or nonfiction, and obtain expert critiques. Get to meet vendors and experts who can help your writing get attention. And all writers get their work in front of their audience. Writers will get to network with agents, publishers, and others in your genre. Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention will be in St. Louis, June 16th through the 18th, 2017. For more information, visit www.stlwritersguild.org or look for GatewayCon on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. GatewayCon, opening the gateway for writers to reach their readers.
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information.
The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.